Is Alice Mercer, and I'm going to give a quick report from the March 2014 CTA State Council. And I know last time I was doing daily reports. I did a report before I even left, but I have to tell you, both due to my professional life and my personal life, I had a lot of things going on, and I'm also doing a lot of work at this particular State Council, and so I haven't had time to be a really good correspondent. So, this State Council. So I'm going to start out by talking about what's known as the democratic process. That's little d democratic process. That is kind of the ethos of CTA and CTA State Council, because in talking to folks here, maybe it's a self-delusional thing, but their feeling is we're really kind of special over in California, not just because it's the Golden State, because of how we run our organization, and State Council is kind of at the heart of that. And there really is the sense that State Council members as representatives are supposed to be participating and proposing ideas, and that this is not unusual. That we go over and we affect things in a number of ways outside of the committees that we belong to, because we can go over and do things on the floor, and we do them pretty regularly, that are not normally necessarily done at statewide union meetings, and a lot of unions don't even bother having statewide meetings. So one of the ways is through what's called the new business item process, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and the other is by pulling items over that are above. And we had examples of both these. I participated in both these at this particular State Council, which is why I've been so busy and why you see the big bags under my eyes. So a new business item is where you propose either policy or action to be taken. And this time I have a new business item that I've submitted. Actually, I've submitted a couple of them. But I'm going to talk about one of them, and it's related to the MPE, or Network for Public Education's call for congressional hearings. And so I submitted an MBE going over and asking that CTA go over and make a statement about this. And so the thing about MBEs is there are certain procedures, and so sometimes you have to go over and work on language, and I had to work on language on this particular one because it involved talking to Congress or congressional delegates in California. And you know, so you end up with jurisdictional issues over because the thinking is that NEA is the contact over at the congressional level, we're the contact over with our state legislature. And so trying to get that so it wasn't stepping over some of those toes involved me doing some work. So that was submitted today. It's apparently going for what's called immediate action. That means rather than going through a committee, because normally MBIs are vetted by committees, this one's going to be taken up over at this State Council because it's an ongoing and, you know, a pretty hot and heavy social media campaign over around it. We wanted to try and get it in now rather than waiting until the May Council. Also, CTA is doing its own social media and media campaign over around learning, not testing, called Raise Your Hand, and so it ties in well with that. Okay, so that's the one way that we have participatory democracy. The other way is by pulling items. And so March in an election year is where a lot of endorsements are coming up. And so in our local school board races, the locals handle doing the endorsement process. And that's because it's their jurisdiction in their backyard. But when you get to races that cross a couple of different locals, it's a more complicated process. The locals, usually at what's called the service center, which is kind of a smaller regional area, go over and do interview panels. They interview the candidates, they make a recommendation. That recommendation then is sent to the CTA board with a rationale for why the decision was made. The CTA board can accept, reject, or make some other recommendation. And then it comes before State Council. And usually what happens with this is it's done on like a consent calendar basis where they approve the list. But being CTA and being California and being contrary, some people will go over and pull the items. And so we had some endorsements pulled and some discussion about them. And it's balancing out, was there enough input over in that particular process. The regional centers try and be very particular to make sure that there's a good balance of representation there to prevent things like that from happening, but we also want to make sure everybody gets their say. So there was a lot of discourse on that. We ended up going into the afternoon session late, and that's where we do committees. And so it's committees and caucuses is the next place where you can go over and talk about stuff over at CTA. And the thing that I'm finding is that we only see each other 4 times a year, and there's only so much time in the day. It's a pretty busy week. And so one of the things that both in my committee and in a caucus meeting I went to, which is the Lulu Caucus, the Large Urban Local group, is how to leverage to go over and try and create some long-term strategy, getting time for that given the short amount of time. And I think we're probably going to be using some sort of online media, either listservs. In one case, it's probably going to be a Ning social network, to go over and try and talk between, so we can have some of those, hey, what do you think of this? No, that's a bad idea because of that. How about this? Oh, look at what we're doing here. So we can get some of that out. And why is this important? There are a lot of changes happening. First of all, it's a change because of the elected leadership, changing policy, switching over to the new standards, switching over to new assessment systems, switching out of the old assessment test, the old test, the old standardized test, and going to these new online tests. And then just the change in leadership with the governor and the superintendent of public instruction, and getting a break for the next few years with the moratorium over on the test scores. And so that's one thing. The other thing is CTA's deliberate attempt to go over and try and create more of an organizing strategy through their strategic plan. I'm going to say that this is the point now at this particular meeting where people are going, okay, we've passed a strategic plan, we've passed AB 484, and we've got this moratorium. What's next? What's the plan? And that's to be expected. I think it's a good question to ask now. And the rubber's going to start hitting the road, and some actions are going to have to be taken, I think, over the next few. But you know, that's really important. And so I'm looking forward to May, and I'm looking forward to some more discussions. I'll just say the 2 big ideas that I take out of this State Council is an idea that was brought up over an assessment and testing committee, which is, we've been focused on the testing. We need to start refocusing on assessment. And assessment is more than test and more than standardized test. The other idea is how to make the term consult, which is being used really throughout the new funding formula, the local control funding formula, and they're supposed to do that over in the LCAPs that districts are preparing now for their budgets. How do we make that mean something? Because right now there are a lot of reports coming out of locals and from districts of districts that are paying lip service to consulting. In other words, they're having a meeting, they're listening to people, but then they're writing these plans that don't reflect what they're hearing. And I think that's going to be an ongoing challenge. Anyway, today is Saturday, the 29th of March, 2014, and this is Alice Mercer, and I'm at CTA State Council.